I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Happy Friday. It's been one hell of a week. Our very special guest today is going to help walk us through some of the great challenges of confronting the Trump administration. Attorney Damon Hewitt is the president and executive director of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, one of the nation's foremost experts in civil rights litigation and policy. Attorney Hewitt has more than 20 years of experience, including prior leadership roles in the nonprofit, philanthropic, and public sectors. Prior to joining the Lawyers Committee, he was the inaugural executive director of the Executives Alliance for Boys and Men of Color and was the chief liaison for the philanthropic community to the White House on policy issues impacting young men of color. President Hewitt previously worked for more than a decade as an attorney for the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and Education Fund. Hewitt joined the Lawyers Committee as executive president in 2019 and was named its president and executive director in 2021. Since then, he has led the organization across victories on a range of critical issues, including affirmative action, race-conscious programs, and diversity, equity, and inclusion, election protection, voter disinformation, redistricting, fair housing, algorithmic bias, and artificial intelligence, and yes, police accountability. President Hewitt's work has been widely covered in a number of news outlets, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Guardian, Bloomberg News, CNN, MSNBC, NBC, and CBS. He holds a BA in political science from Louisiana State University and a JD from the University of Pennsylvania Law School. In other words, President Hewitt is on the front line of our struggle in challenging the Trump administration. President Hewitt, welcome to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Hey, brother.
Really honored to have you. President Hewitt, let's get right into it. I'd like to play a clip from a recent speech by Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson just broke her silence and sharply condemned Donald Trump and his attacks on our judicial system. Let me explain. This in a new piece from Politico. Ketanji Brown Jackson sharply condemns Trump's attacks on judges. The Supreme Court justice said it was time to address the elephant in the room, the threats and harassment that judges have received from Trump and his allies. Jackson made the following remarks at a judicial conference in Puerto Rico. She said the following, quote, "The attacks are not random. They seem designed to intimidate those of us who serve in this critical capacity. The threats and harassment are attacks on our democracy, on our system of government, and they ultimately risk undermining our Constitution and the rule of law." Jackson did not mention Trump by name, but said that she was addressing, quote, "the elephant in the room," and called on her judicial colleagues to show raw courage to dispense justice without fear of the results. Quote, "I urge you to keep going, keep doing what is right for our country, and I do believe that history will vindicate your service." Before a scheduled onstage discussion about her life, Jackson strode to the lectern and said she had decided to speak out against the relentless attacks and disregard and disparagement that judges around the country and perhaps many of you are facing on a daily basis. Quote, "It seems as though every time I read the news or turn on the television these days, I see affronts." Jackson compared this moment to attacks that judges received surrounding the civil rights movement and the Watergate scandal, and she urged her colleagues to take inspiration from those examples, saying other judges have faced challenges like the ones we face today and have prevailed. It is very rare for a Supreme Court justice to speak out in this way, and I know we are thankful here at the Midas Touch Network that Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson is sounding the alarm. We're going to
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward, the next voice you will hear will be President Damon Hewitt. He is on the front line of fighting for our rights and holding the president and this administration accountable to the Constitution of the United States. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward.
The station you turn to when you've had it up to here with cultural incompetence. KBLA Talk 1580. If you missed our KBLA Talk 1580 Town Hall, the Altadena Eden Fire, 100 Days and Counting, you missed an evening of reverence, reflection, and reality.
You gotta live in the reality because this is it. Every day you wake up, is this my life? Don't stay in denial because yes it is. Don't stay in bargaining where you're praying for a miracle and if it wouldn't have happened, then this is what I would have done. It did.
Our panel participants kept it real. really real.
I think, number one, it's amazing to me how we ignore systemic racism in our community. And as a people, we've apologized for so much. But when will we stop apologizing for what we have paid for? Because the truth of the matter is we paid for this.
You can always count on KBLA Talk 1580 to give it to you straight, no chaser. When you love folk, you tell them the truth. Seeking the truth, speaking the truth. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we don't black down.
At Charmin, we heard you shouldn't talk about going to the bathroom in public, so we decided to sing about it.
Light a candle, pour some wine. Grab a roll, the soft kind for a little me time. Charmin Ultra Soft Smooth Tear. Wavy edges for my rear. So let the softness caress your soul. Just relax, you're on a roll. Let her rip. Charmin Ultra Soft Smooth Tear.
Charmin Ultra Soft Smooth Tear has the same softness you love, now with wavy edges that tear better than the leading one-ply brand. Enjoy the go with Charmin.
Small businesses are the heart of America. But you don't have to go it alone. As the nation's largest nonprofit resource of expert business mentoring, SCORE has helped millions of entrepreneurs build their businesses for free. Get the connections, education, and guidance you need with SCORE. We're ready to help. Find a mentor today at score.org.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where hate meets a scholarly match.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest is the president of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. President Hewitt, I don't know a single person in this nation. We've had just about every major head of every major organization in the country on this program who is more equipped, more prepared to answer a question raised by Martin Luther King Jr. in one of his final books. Where do we go from here? Chaos or community? President Hewitt, help our listeners understand where we are and what we're confronting.
Such a profound question, a profound and prophetic at the same time, because the question answers itself if we are called into our true selves and true being. We're at a point that some will call a sea change point or inflection point or a major shift. This is not a run-of-the-mill fight against bad policy. It's not even a partisan fight because I lead a nonpartisan organization, and the people and institutions being attacked are by and large nonpartisan, whether they be educational institutions, nonprofit organizations, higher education, and even corporations. They're not nonprofit, but they don't look at party, they look at their profit motive, quite honestly. And so we're at this point where, you know, there's a school of thought that this many people can't be wrong, right? Like this many people under attack, this many institutions under attack, this many norms under attack. We're at a point at which all the things that we knew and held to be valued are being undermined, eroded, and just obliterated. We're at a point in time when the protections that we held dear, which some took for granted, are not only being undermined and called into question. We're being told that the very things that so many of us have done to defend and protect civil rights are somehow themselves illegal and unconstitutional, even though no court has said so. We're at a time where there is very convenient compromise being made to protect certain interests and preserve certain profits on the backs of Black people. It feels like the end of Reconstruction. It feels like another nadir for the Black lived experience. A time when our allies, our friends, our infrastructure betrays us and walks away. That's a
Mr.
time for building.
I don't want to cut you off, but I hear you when you say the nadir, you meaning the long, dark night of African-American history and the experience that we shared in this country as a nation.
That's exactly right. We're talking about the end of Reconstruction and the very long period, depending on how you count it, really almost 100 years until the legalized end of Jim Crow, right? Some would look at a shorter period, but I look at that in entirety of the period, frankly, because it took that long from the end of the Civil War to end of Reconstruction, rather, which lasted only a dozen years, until we get to Brown v. Board, until we get to the civil rights era of the 1960s, that we started to really see a meaningful turnaround.
Your thoughts on Ketanji Brown Jackson's unprecedented speech yesterday and her attack not only on the big elephant in the room, but her challenge to the judicial branch?
Sometimes the things that seem unprecedented are the most common sense. For want or fear of being viewed as political or politicized, for folks wanting to stay in their lane, what she said seemed so uncommon, but it's what's on everyone's minds. You know, we had a federal judge, Esther Salas, who was subjected to a vicious, violent attack almost 5 years ago. Her son was murdered, and this murder was committed by a lawyer who I believe had appeared before her court, who was, I believe, a self-described anti-feminist. You could see the same thing happening in terms of anti-Blackness, in terms of the potential physical and violent attacks, but the rhetorical attacks as well, that are grounded and based in nothing. You know, people talk about so-called activist judges and activist courts. There's nothing more activist than judges who ignore decades of precedent and issue injunctions that fly in the face of reality. There's nothing more anti-democratic than when even conservative judges on federal courts in particular stand up for what's right in the rule of law, not because of politics, but because they follow the actual law, which is, you know, in many ways on our side. When they follow law, they are pilloried by sometimes the people who put them on the bench in the first place. Right. And so what these judges are starting to realize, and I think Ketanji Brown Jackson, Justice Jackson speaks to it, is that unless we have a mainstream of thought, unless we have a supermajority of people in this country who understand that there is a way to call the law and analyze the law in legal disputes in a fair and robust way, whether you agree or not. But when people do things that are extra legal, that are essentially unlawful or illegal, and think they can just get away with it, when people try to rewrite the law with their pen or the diarrhea of their mouth, when people ignore federal court orders and you can't do anything about it, then we're in real trouble. So what she said was really a call to consciousness and a call to action, not just for judges, but for everyone in this country.
I think that's right. But I also am ashamed that the cruelty that's being directed at the justice since she delivered her remarks. Some have called her online a man. Others have called her a DEI pig. It seems that the best and most qualified African Americans who've attained a level of accomplishment in our society, whether it's in the public sector or the private sector, they simply cannot escape being called a DEI hire. And I was with a businessman in Chicago earlier this morning, a gentleman by the name of Elsie Higginbotham. And Mr. Higginbotham wanted to remind the first Blacks who ever went to Harvard, or the first Blacks in this generation who are gaining access to the Ivy League schools and to college educations, many of them feel that they are special because through all of their hard work, they made it. But he reminded me and reminded them via me, he said, listen, there's always been qualified people, but there had to be this generation to knock down the doors to let qualified people in. There's nothing special about you. And so now we're looking at the most qualified jurist in the nation, Ketanji Brown Jackson, being called a DEI hire simply to suggest that her opinion is irrelevant, that she doesn't belong on the court in the first place. That certainly is one of the consequences of the climate that we're living in, right, Mr. President?
It very much is. And, one part of the instinct is for people to say, well, no, I'm not a DEI hire, or she's not a DEI hire. But that, brother, is a trap. I was listening to an NPR story a month or so ago. This was after the horrific plane crash at the DC airport. And what did Trump say right after? He said, well, it must have been a DEI related thing, or a DEI hire led to it. So in this NPR story, there were a few pilots, and one was a Black woman. And the Black woman said, well, there's no such thing as DEI. Everyone's qualified. And I thought to myself, sister, I understand what you're trying to say, but I don't like what you're saying. Because what you're doing is you're distancing yourself from avenues of opportunity, not just for Black people or Black women, but for everyone. And saying, oh, I didn't come here through an avenue of opportunity. I earned it, as if those two things are mutually exclusive, and they are not. And so the trap that gets invited is in the response, right? But I agree with you that it is a dastardly thing that she is being criticized and attacked. The people who are doing that are criticizing her not because of what she said, but just because they have an opening, right? They had the same agenda before her remarks as they did after. So let's be clear about that. But also let's be clear that if anything, as you said, she's the most qualified on that bench. She earned every step of the way, because we know in our community that you have to be twice as good just to even be considered for the same type of opportunities. When you are a Black first, you are at least twice as good. When you're a Black woman first, you might have to be 3 times as good.
That's right.
Right? Just to even be considered as a safe choice by whoever the powers that be are. So that should be laughed right out of the realm of common sense. We'd be laughing if it wasn't so deadly serious.
I've always seen affirmative action and any remedies that post-Brown versus the Board of Education, the Civil Rights Act of 64, which included race, sex, origin, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, the Fair Housing legislation of 67 and 68. When you look at all of the beginning of Second Reconstruction, the Civil Rights Movement, Brown, the beginning of Second Reconstruction, and the entire process forward, affirmative action has been designed as conservative remedies to offset historical negative action against Black people. I want to pivot from this idea for a moment to something you raised on the question of NPR, and by virtue of NPR, PBS, and the idea that you mentioned in your opening remarks that attacking nonpartisan organizations, including attacking nonpartisan media entities, represent a true threat to our democracy.
Well, exactly. So these are mediums or media that are widely regarded as thoroughly objective, with the highest standards, with the highest quality, with content that is designed not to be salacious, not to be titillating in any manner of imagination, that is not fully overtaken by any corporate interests, certainly not any political interests at all. And so what I see in the strategy of the other side here is a strategy to drag everyone else down with them, false equivocation. The efforts, we're representing the Southern Christian Leadership Conference right now in this effort where the Trump administration wants to release records that we believe were illegally, unlawfully obtained through unlawful surveillance in the 1960s, surveillance of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and also other SCLC leaders. And part of the impetus behind what they're doing and trying to release these records is to try to drag down and sully the name and reputation of Dr. King and other leaders, so that people like Trump can say, well, look, they're just like me. There's no difference. That the exceptionality of his misdeeds doesn't become so exceptional if he can drag others down. Same thing with these institutions like NPR and whatnot. His Truth Social platform doesn't seem so crazy if he can convince people that there's a false equivalence. Well, NBC, ABC, PBS, NPR, they all politicized anyway. Everyone's politicized. That's part of the strategy, is to undermine faith and confidence in institutions that otherwise should and could be trusted, so that he is the only answer or his outlets gain more prominence. That's part of what he's trying to do. One of the biggest tools in the authoritarian playbook is to divide people. You can't conquer unless you divide. And this is just part of division. It is undermining institutions, undermining individuals. And if you can't put them against each other, at least stop them from exercising solidarity with each other.
Mr. President, you mentioned the name the Southern Christian Leadership, and I want to congratulate the Lawyers Committee for putting up the fight on behalf of protecting the reputation of Martin Luther King Jr. But when I think about the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and I think about the NAACP, our nation's oldest civil rights organization, the Urban League, and the other legacy organizations, of which the Lawyers Committee is one, I simply don't know if any of our organizations from the turn of the century before last, the 1900s, to the present, are organized to combat the kind of attacks that we are experiencing from the executive in this country. I think in this hour and at this moment, only the Lawyers Committee is particularly flexible, particularly buoyant enough to be able to lead this fight. Your thought about how our organizations may need to be restructured to consider the threat that confronts our basic individual rights and liberties.
Well, I appreciate the belief and support of the Lawyers Committee, but I also want to lift up my brothers and sisters who run the other legacy organizations. I think the job that Derek Johnson has done with the NAACP is outstanding. Without the platform of a Reverend Jesse Jackson, the National Action Network, our message wouldn't have as much salience when we appear on his radio show and yours or his television show. There is a tight unit and network of leaders and organizations. The trick here is the secret sauce is, can the whole be greater than the sum of the parts? See, like the NAACP files lawsuits, we represent them quite a bit, especially in voting rights cases. The Legal Defense Fund, where I used to work, files lawsuits. NAN has the Bully Pulpit platform. My sister Siobhan Arline Bradley leads the National Council of Negro Women, which people think of as an organization. They think of an image of the amazing late great Dr. Dorothy Height being older women. It's intergenerational leadership that is brought to the table through NCNW. My sister Melanie Campbell, National Coalition on Black Civic Participation, and so on and so on. So we're all looking in the mirror, because every organization has to ask itself right now, what is our organization going to be about in this moment? How are we showing up in the fight and meeting the moment? And what we have to do is meet the moment together. We have to make sure always that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So I fully believe in my organization, the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, but we get we get further together. You know, there's the old proverb that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And we are committed to going together.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to President Damon Hewitt of the Lawyers Committee. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward, more with President Hewitt.
Say the quiet part out loud. KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Doug Davis with BIN News Now. Thousands of supporters of workers' rights made their voices heard as May Day marches took place Thursday across the country for International Workers' Day. Black Representative Jasmine Crockett tells MSNBC.
Listen, I got to say thank you to the people, right? Because this is a grassroots movement and the people are saying we are tired.
Those who participated in the May Day event called for stronger protections for workers, higher wages, and greater equality. A federal judge is declining to block the enforcement of key provisions in President Trump's executive orders involving gender, diversity, equity, and inclusion. 3 civil and human rights organizations requested a preliminary injunction, but the request was denied. The advocacy groups all receive federal funding. And Hollywood superstar Nick Cannon received the Humanitarian Award at Howard University's Bison Choice Awards for his support of HBCUs, including helping pay for a student's tuition. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice: continue their dream of education or drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at unbound.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
If the Lakers had defeated Minnesota Wednesday night in Game 5, they would not have had LeBron James for Game 6 tonight in Minneapolis. NBA sources said an MRI exam Friday morning revealed that LeBron suffered a grade 2 medial collateral sprain in his left knee Wednesday night. The injury does not require surgery, but recovery time is generally 3 to 6 weeks. The 40-year-old LeBron would have missed the rest of the series against Minnesota and part of the second round had the Lakers advanced. The injury would have snapped LeBron's streak of 292 consecutive playoff games, the longest in NBA history. LeBron was injured with 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter when he collided with Minnesota forward Dante DiVincenzo. LeBron fell to the floor in pain and limped to the bench. He went back into the game about a minute later. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Looking for a purposeful and passionate way to make a difference in your community? Volunteer with our Senior Medicare Patrol and help prevent Medicare fraud. S&P volunteers work in their community, educating peers about healthcare fraud and how to prevent and detect it. Free training starts soon. Check us out online or at an S&P open house near you. We're on a mission to stop fraud. Join our team. You make a difference. Visit caspvolunteer.org. Protect yourself from Medicare card scams. Scammers may call, email, or even knock on your door claiming they need your Medicare info, asking for money or threatening to cancel your benefits. Don't fall for it. It's a scam. Remember, Medicare doesn't need to verify your information. They already have it. Medicare won't charge you for a new card and will never threaten to cancel benefits. Check your Medicare statements for suspicious charges and report scams to the California Senior Medicare Patrol at 1-855-613-7080. We're here to help.
All I need is one mic.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. With so many shows on our station weekdays and weekends, it's hard for me to keep track of all the guests who are actually in studio on any given day. I wish I'd known in advance that LADA Nathan Hochman was coming in studio for a recent interview. Had I known, I would have loved to have personally greeted him and then asked him why LA City Council member Curran Price is being criminally prosecuted for allegations of misconduct similar to the conflict of interest violations for which former City Council member Kevin De Leon is only being fined. What's that about, Mr. DA? In fairness to Mr. Hochman, it was former DA George Gascon who actually filed felony charges against Councilman Price. I opined then on how these criminal charges against Price did not pass the smell test. I was concerned then that this was yet another wayward prosecution of a high-profile black elected, not to mention a waste of taxpayer money. I am even more convinced now that this is a hot mess. To be clear, neither you or I want a bunch of self-serving, greedy, conflict of interest criminals managing the people's business inside LA City Hall. But we also don't want selective or targeted prosecution of black politicians. We've seen that movie before, and we don't need a sequel. It's hard to watch Kevin De Leon get away with paying an $18,000 fine for repeated ethics violations, what he calls an oversight, and at the same time, watch the DA's office continue its criminal prosecution of Curran Price for issues allegedly involving his wife's clients. Motions, I might add, that were passed unanimously by the LA City Councilman. What are you saying, Tavis? I'm glad you asked. DA Hochman did not start this inquisition, but he certainly has the power to stop it. I have said it before, and I will say it again. Fundamental fairness. In the absence of fundamental fairness, we experience a cascade of deteriorating conditions. The erosion of trust, the weakening of social cohesion, alienation, marginalization, the legitimacy of authority diminishes, cynicism and disengagement grow, and ultimately, people abandon civic participation altogether. Fundamental fairness, Mr. Hochman, that's all we ask. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. As always, we welcome your feedback.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
You got a big mouth. Hello, Joe, you're up. Welcome.
We're unapologetically progressive, and we don't black down.
Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest is none other than Damon Hewitt, who is the president and executive director of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, one of the nation's foremost experts in civil rights litigation and policy. President Hewitt has more than 20 years of experience, including prior leadership roles in the nonprofit, philanthropic, and public sectors. President Hewitt, I know that we're going to lose you at the end of this segment, but just before I do, I want to ask you to do two things. First, can you tell us what we can do to support the Lawyers Committee?
Thank you. Great question. So we all have, regardless of our station in life, different forms of capital. There's our human capital, our fiscal capital, our reputational capital. The human capital is volunteering, especially if you're a lawyer. That's what the Lawyers Committee is all about. We had a group of Black lawyers and white lawyers, including the late John Conyers, who came together in 1963 to create the Lawyers Committee. And our motto is we have a robust staff of dozens of people, including lawyers, but we also leverage the private bar. Last year, we leveraged the private bar for tens of thousands of pro bono hours valued at $130 million in terms of what they would charge if they charge clients. So we need that model to continue. But even if you're not a lawyer, you can volunteer for election protection, the 866 Our Vote hotline, and also be deployed in your own community. It's not just about major election years, it's about all over the country, because there's an election every year somewhere. The second form of capital is your fiscal. We do appreciate financial support and donations. Visit lawyerscommittee.org to learn more. But then there's your reputational capital. Beyond your human and fiscal, that is speaking out, standing up. I have two buttons on my lapel for those who can see me on the audio, the video feed rather. There's a Lawyers Committee pin representing our anniversary, but there's also a pin from the Freedom to Learn campaign, and it reads, "I take my history black," as in taking it back, but we're taking back our Black history. This is a campaign led by my dear friend, Professor Kimberly Williams Crenshaw from the African American Policy Forum, who is leading a week of activity. And we're getting out the message that our young people deserve the freedom to learn. Our educators deserve the freedom to teach. We are litigating these issues in the courts at the Lawyers Committee in Arkansas, Oklahoma, and elsewhere. And we're winning. Even with Trump-appointed judges, we are winning injunctions in these cases to stop classroom censorship. But we also have to speak out and demand our history, not just at the Blacksonian, the Museum of African American History and Culture, but at your local library, at your local school board, in your local school district, in your workplace. We have to use our reputational capital and align our actions with our values.
So we need lawyers who are available to join the Lawyers Committee, to become part of the Lawyers Committee, because again, their capital is them giving their time, being trained by your organization being responsive to your organization, and being able to go into court and obviously offer injunctions where necessary. And those lawyers can call what number?
Well, they should go online to lawyerscommunity.org, also to election protection. Sorry, excuse me, 866ivote.org. Excuse me, where you can find election protection. Don't call 866ivote to volunteer. That's to get help for voters out there. Any day of the year you can call. But if you go to 866ivote.org, you can get help, but also sign up to volunteer, whether you're a lawyer or not.
And the wind beneath your wings is the fiscal and the financial. How do we do that one more time?
Go to lawyerscommittee.org. There's a donate tab there. We accept no gift is too big or too small, and we can have our staff be in conversation with you about the ways in which you want to give. If you have some stock, if you have property, what have you, that you want to dedicate and leverage for the cause. If you like to host something in your community for us to get to know people in your community who may be interested in learning more about the organization, we're willing to do that. I'm a brother who does travel, more than my family would like. And we have many other wonderful staff members who are doing this work as well, who want to be directly connected to what our people are experiencing, discussing, and want to know about all across the country.
For those who are watching the video feed, that information is available in the scroll. I hope you take the president's challenge on both being present, but also giving presents very, very seriously. President Hewitt, in this part of the show, which we normally reserve for the latter part of the segment, I always ask our departing guests for a word of hope. We have about 2 minutes or so before the break. Please give us a word of hope.
My word of hope comes from a mix of our ancestors and our young people. We know that there were many foot soldiers for justice out there on Bloody Sunday in Selma, Alabama, decades ago. There were elders and there were youth as well. And as we marched across that bridge a few years ago, because we go every year for the Jubilee, I noted how steep the bridge is physically. The bridge is so steep, the Edmund Pettus Bridge that is, in Selma, going to Montgomery, is so steep that you can't literally see what's on the other side of the bridge until you get to the apex. And that for me struck a kind of a metaphor that our ancestors didn't know what the fight would lead to. They didn't know what the march would lead to. Yet they had every reason to think that they would be beaten, that they could be killed, and every reason to think that they would lose. And so I thought to myself, as we marched across that bridge every year, we don't stand in fear of being beaten and killed. We also don't know that we're going to win, but who are we not to march forward? Who are we to dishonor our ancestors' legacy and not just try for trying's sake, but try the best we know how, and to get stronger and smarter every year? So what gives me hope is that people who made a way out of no way, who marched for voting rights before there was a Voting Rights Act, we have a Voting Rights Act now that's under attack. Why can't we physically march, proverbially march? Why can't we move forward together? We have more assets today than they did then. We have no excuse. So I get hope in the fact that we have gotten stronger in the last 62 years since the Lawyers Committee was founded in 63, and that we can be even stronger now, today and 60 years forward than we were back then and than we are today.
Mr. President, thank you so much for keeping hope alive, and we are so grateful. We look forward to supporting your organization and to standing along your side as you fight the good fight. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Our very special guest has been President Damon Hewitt of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. Mr. President, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, brother.
When we come forward, a special guest.
KBLA Talk 1580 is an intervention. When we come forward, includes you. KBLA Talk 1580, turning pain into power.
The Comedy Connection series featuring KBLA's Zoe Williams, the voice of reason, and the alpha male of comedy, Ray Grady. We're going to transform relationship disasters into stand-up material live at Inglewood's Miracle Theater on May 31st at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. My clinical team will disclose all of your dating woes, while the alpha male of comedy, Ray Grady, has hand-selected supreme supremely talented comedians to roast all of our tragic relationship choices. I dare you to bring your ex's phone number because Ray, he's going to text it live and the crowd will be sourcing emojis. Tickets are moving swiftly, so don't hesitate to grab yours at themiracleinglewood.com before I diagnose your dating history as a pre-existing condition.
Texting privacy policy and terms and conditions posted at textplan.us. Texting enrolls for recurring automated text marketing messages. Message and data rates may apply. Reply stop, opt out. Individual results may vary. Consult a doctor prior to use.
If you've struggled to lose weight in the past, this important message is for you because you could lose as much as 50 pounds or more with Zelfie. Zelfie makes it easy and affordable to get weight loss treatment 100% online. Zelfie providers can prescribe FDA-approved GLP-1 weight loss medications clinically shown to help people lose weight like Wegovy, Zepbound, and others. Plus, help get the medication covered by insurance so it's as little as $0 a month.
The doctors are super helpful, and the meds have been a game changer. It's the first program I've had success with.
Before Zelfie, I was unable to lose weight, even though I was eating healthy and exercising 6 days a week. Zelfie helped me not only lose weight, but I feel so much better.
Text GOAL to 200-300 to get started today with Zelfie and see if weight loss medications like Wegovy or Zepbound are right for you. Don't wait. Text now for a link to your exclusive offer. Text GOAL to 200-300. That's GOAL to 200-300. GOAL to 200-300.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you that we keep us safe. The Live Your Life organization mentors young women, helping them break negative mindsets and see beyond their surroundings. Through career exposure and hands-on training, they're encouraged to think big, stay focused, and make positive choices. Founded by Nikisha Mama Boo Smith, who transformed her life to become a community leader. Live Your Life is changing lives, but they need your help. They're raising funds to keep their new building open and expand their program. Your donations will support food, clothes, hygiene products, and holiday giveaways. Visit liveyourlife32.com. That's LIVEYOLIFE32.com to help today. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Texting privacy policy and terms and conditions posted at textplan.us. Texting enrolls for recurring automated text marketing messages. Message and data rates may apply. Reply stop, opt out. Individual results may vary. Consult a doctor prior to use.
If you've struggled to lose weight in the past, this important message is for you because you could lose as much as 50 pounds or more with Zelfie. Zelfie makes it easy and affordable to get weight loss treatment 100% online. Zelfie providers can prescribe FDA-approved GLP-1 weight loss medications clinically shown to help people lose weight like Wegovy, Zepbound, and others. Plus, help get the medication covered by insurance so it's as little as $0 a month.
The doctors are super helpful, and the meds have been a game changer. It's the first program I've had success with.
Before Zelfie, I was unable to lose weight, even though I was eating healthy and exercising 6 days a week. Zelfie helped me not only lose weight, but I feel so much better.
Text GOAL to 200-300 to get started today with Zelfie and see if weight loss medications like Wegovy or Zepbound are right for you. Don't wait. Text now for a link to your exclusive offer. Text GOAL to 200-300. That's GOAL to 200-300. GOAL to 200-300.
Heard any other talk radio lately that sounds anything like this? We don't think so. You're listening to Unapologetically Progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. We are honored in this final segment to have a very special guest, attorney Josie Matthews, who I had the great privilege of meeting in 1987, maybe 86.
85.
85? 1985, and he worked with my father until 1989. And he is an attorney. He's also the grandson of General Z.K. Matthews, who was an iconic freedom fighter in South Africa. Josie practices law. He's lived all over the world, lives in South Africa, flew to Chicago, and reminded me that the predecessor to Damon Hewitt was Gabe McDougall, who is standing next to Nelson Mandela when Nelson Mandela casts his first vote to become president of South Africa, which gives you some idea of the reach of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. Josie, welcome to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you. What an honor and a privilege to be with you again after so long. We haven't aged a bit.
But let me say this, Josie, and I want you to give this some thought, because this is our final segment. But you have an international perspective of what's taking place in the world. In our country, we know what's happening. But there is a democratic retreat throughout the world. Authoritarianism is on the rise. Some would even argue that fascism is on the rise. We certainly know that it is domestically. What are you witnessing and what are you experiencing?
I think that it's really a very significant moment historically, and it's reminiscent of perhaps the end of the Second World War, that you saw the rise of the great powers and the alliances that were formed after 1945. And we're almost now witnessing the reverse. Some of those alliances, can they withstand what's happening globally and some of the changes and the impact on the global system? I think it has consequences that reach beyond just the Western powers, but impacts Africa in a very, very big and substantive way. But it's almost, you don't know what to expect next. I call it, it's almost the law of unintended consequences. You know, what's coming next? What's going to be the impact? South Africa in particular, what are the impacts of some of those decisions that are being made on us as a country and on us as a continent? So it's a very, very significant moment in global affairs and in the history of the world as we know it.
I receive a copy of The Economist every day from you that you forward to me. What has been the impact in South Africa and in Africa proper of the tariff war?
Well, it's going to mean that there's going to be a significant impact, particularly on our exports. We do export to the United States. Some of the vehicles that are manufactured in South Africa actually come to the United States. So that's going to have a huge impact. We also belong to AGOA. That may change. The impact on the cuts and the closing of the USAID. There's a lot of impact on HIV and retroviral support that has been given by the United States. So there's going to be a lot of collateral damage that will be done to South Africa, given the fact that we've been very close for many, many years and still are close to the United States. But the impact of the tariff war, I think, will be significant, and we'll see what some of those outcomes are going to be in the next couple of months.
Do you see any hope for what's taking place in this reorganization or shuffling of the deck of the global economy?
Well, it may force countries to start looking inward and how they can readjust their economies to take account of what's happening. Smaller countries may be impacted disproportionately to some of the bigger economies that we know in Western Europe, Asia. It certainly means that we have to see how we can manage our economies and manage those economies perhaps in a much more conservative fashion. I think it's changing, but you have to be more independent in terms of what you do and how you do it and who you trade with. So it does have an impact, but I think that policymakers are going to be looking and study what some of those decisions mean for them.
I asked President Hewitt just before he departed this question raised by Martin Luther King Jr. in one of his final books. Where do we go from here, chaos or community? And it's clear that chaos isn't something we could have ever conceived of, maybe to the extent that Dr. King actually conceived of it. Is community possible?
Community is very much possible, given the the global interdependence. And we saw that during COVID, that community is possible. And so that I am my brother's keeper, so to speak. So we hope that there'll be a return to that at some point, and that it's not lost. I think that we will see the emergence of greater community, because countries will have to now learn how to interact with each other, perhaps in different ways than before. And so that may be the blessing that may come out of this situation. But I think it's one that is ripe with meaning in so many ways, and we just have to see what adjustments are made to take account of it.
Some of Africa's best and brightest leaders, doctors, thinkers, business people, agricultural professors, as well as the know-how that America has offered. The present administration seems somewhat hostile to the idea that immigrants can come to the United States on education visas and take advantage of the best of agricultural schools and technical schools, and then subsequently return home to Africa. The kind of brain drain opportunities that previous administrations have supported. This administration appears to be particularly hostile to people of color and to Africans.
Well, I think they're going to perhaps look at the United States first, but you'll find that many students who studied in the United States, even from Africa. I mean, I know my grandfather did his master's at Yale in 1936, and he went back to South Africa to make his own contribution. And I think that'll be the norm.
Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the president of Liberia,
of course,
was a Harvard graduate. She went back to become the first female president of Liberia.
Absolutely. So it's quite normal that I think ultimately we want to see a lot of students who are educated here will want to go back. Some may want to remain for a variety of reasons. But the strength of the United States and even South Africa has been the ability to absorb immigrants who come there to study and work and to be able to make a contribution. And South Africa is no exception to that. We also pride ourselves.
I keep hearing, Jose, from so many African Americans in this environment that a lot of African Americans are thinking about coming home. They're talking about looking at African countries to relocate. Will they be welcomed?
They'll be welcomed, absolutely. If you want to make a contribution, definitely you'll be welcomed. You come with skills. I think that they'll be welcomed. You'll see that there are many African Americans who are living across the continent, whether it's Ghana, South Africa, and they're making a contribution to that. And so I think that they will be welcomed. And it's something that I know that people talk about consistently. So it's most African countries are open and very, very willing to take up people who've got skills and can make a contribution.
I very much look forward to your return to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. What a surprise it was to have you drop by today. I want to thank you for all of the work here in the United States that you contributed to Jesse Jackson's campaign in 1988, to the early establishment of the Rainbow Coalition and coalition politics, much of which you took back to Africa. And as an international affairs director of the National Rainbow Coalition, you spread the idea of coalition building on the ground in Africa. I'm grateful that President Damon Hewitt has been our very special guest on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, and we had a surprise visit today from attorney Jose Matthews. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward, it will be Monday. See you next week.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Doug Davis with